You think you know the law, little girl? The judge bellowed, slamming his gavel with a thunderous bang that echoed through the cold courtroom. Everyone turned to stare at the girl standing in front of the bench, a teenager in a plain black hoodie, jeans, and sneakers. Her hair was tied in a messy ponytail, and her backpack looked more suited for high school than a courtroom. She didn't flinch. Instead, she looked straight into the judge's eyes with a calm expression that made everyone uncomfortable. You think this is a joke? He snapped, rising from his seat now, his robe fluttering slightly as he stepped closer. You walk into my courtroom, speak without permission, and challenge my ruling? You might think you're smart with your little big words, but this is not a school debate. This is real law. Gasps filled the courtroom. The bailiff reached for her arm. She didn't resist. But then, just before she was taken out, she spoke again, not loudly, but with clarity. Your Honor, she said, you've just violated 3 statutes in the Constitution, 2 federal laws, and 1 court procedure. But I'm sure you already know that. Or maybe you don't. The judge's jaw dropped. Silence. No one moved. The room, once buzzing with whispers, fell still. You could hear the ticking of the courtroom clock. The girl didn't move. She just stood there, hands behind her back, looking too calm for a teenager who had just been scolded by a judge in front of a full courtroom. The judge's mouth opened and closed like a fish, but no sound came out. Who was this girl? And how did she know court procedures better than most lawyers? 3 months earlier, in a dusty little town in Arizona, 16-year-old Madison Reed sat behind the counter of her uncle's secondhand bookstore, scribbling in a worn leather notebook. The shop was empty most days, except for Mr. Dalton, the old man who came in every Tuesday for coffee and legal thrillers. Madison wasn't like most kids her age. She didn't care about TikTok, parties, or gossip. What she loved was the law, cases, rulings, arguments, and justice. She studied court transcripts the way others studied video games. Ever since her parents died in a car crash 3 years ago, she found comfort in rules, structure, and fairness. Things life hadn't always given her. Her uncle, Tom, a kind man with tired eyes and permanent grease on his hands from running his repair shop next door, had taken her in. He didn't understand her passion for the law, but he never stood in her way. One warm afternoon, Madison found a strange-looking book under a pile of forgotten donations at the back of the shop. The cover was torn, and the title was faded, but inside, it was a goldmine, a copy of a real courtroom training manual used by law students. Her heart raced. She read every page, twice, then again, and again. By the end of the week, she was walking around quoting case law and pretending the shop's front counter was a judge's bench. Mr. Dalton began calling her Judge Maddie. One Saturday morning, the store bell jingled, and in walked a nervous young woman holding a crying baby and a stack of papers. I'm sorry, the woman said, her voice shaky. I heard from the mechanic that you help people. Madison stood up from behind the counter. What kind of help? I'm being evicted, she whispered, and I don't understand the papers. I don't have money for a lawyer. Madison didn't even blink. She took the papers, scanned them, and pointed to several parts. They can't do this without giving you proper notice. And this clause here? It violates state housing codes. The woman's eyes widened. You need to go to court, Madison added, and show them this section. Bring the baby. Judges don't like landlords who try to scare single moms. A week later, the woman returned with tears in her eyes and a bag of homemade cookies. They dropped the case, she said, hugging Madison. The judge said the paperwork was a mess and the landlord had no right. Word spread, quietly but quickly. More people started showing up, someone with a traffic fine they couldn't pay, a teenager who was unfairly expelled, an old veteran fighting a denied benefit. Madison never asked for anything. She just helped. But not everyone liked it. One afternoon, 2 men in suits came into the bookstore while her uncle was in the back. They flashed badges. Are you the one pretending to be a lawyer? Madison stood her ground. I never said I was a lawyer. I just help people understand their rights. Practice without a license is a crime, kid, one of them said sharply. You want to play courtroom? Do it at home. Next time we hear you're advising people, we press charges. She didn't tell her uncle. But that night, she cried into her pillow. She thought about stopping. She thought maybe the men were right. But then she thought about the baby's smile when the eviction was dropped, and the way the veteran had saluted her with trembling fingers. So she kept helping. Smarter this time. Quieter. She read more books, studied real case law, and even found free online lectures from actual law professors. Her mind was sharp. She memorized faster than most adults. She trained herself like a real lawyer, without ever stepping into a law school. Then one day, something changed everything. Mr. Dalton, sweet old Mr. Dalton, was arrested. He had been accused of stealing money from the pharmacy he once worked at. Madison knew he didn't do it. He barely remembered his own birthday. The thought of him committing fraud was ridiculous. But he didn't have a lawyer. He didn't have money. And no one believed him. Madison stood outside the courthouse, her backpack slung over one shoulder. Her heart thudded so loud she could hear it in her ears. She was 16. She wasn't allowed to speak in court. She wasn't even allowed to sit in the front row. But she couldn't let them take Mr. Dalton away. So she did something wild. She found a way in. She waited until the real public defender stepped outside to take a phone call. She slipped into the room, took a breath, and when the case was called, she stood up. People gasped, but the judge didn't recognize her. Not yet. I'd like to speak on behalf of the defendant, she said. The courtroom went quiet. The judge raised an eyebrow. Who are you? She gave a fake name. A calm voice. She quoted a law no one expected her to know. Then, the judge's patience snapped. And that's where we were. Back in the courtroom, with the judge rising from his bench, yelling at the girl who dared challenge him. You're a child, he said, his voice cracking. You don't belong here. But Madison didn't look scared. She looked ready. The bailiff reached for her arm again. She whispered something. The judge's face drained of color. He stared at her, then looked at the papers on his desk, then back at her, and then he slowly sat back down. Everyone watched, confused. What had she said? What did he see? Why did the judge suddenly look nervous? But before anyone could ask, the courtroom door burst open. A voice shouted, "Stop everything. We have a situation." And just like that, everything changed. The courtroom door slammed open so hard that the sound bounced off the walls like a gunshot. Everyone turned at once. A man in a sharp blue suit strode in, followed by two other officials, one holding a thick folder. The man's face was flushed, and he looked angry, but not at the girl. He marched straight to the judge's bench, ignoring everyone else. We need to talk. Now. The judge's eyes narrowed. Excuse me. The man leaned closer and whispered something in the judge's ear. The judge's face turned from red to pale. Court is in recess. The judge barked suddenly, slamming his gavel. Clear the room. Now. Gasps broke out. People looked around in confusion. The bailiff began ushering everyone out. Lawyers, witnesses, even the security guard near the back. They were all pushed toward the doors. Everyone, that is, except Madison. The judge pointed to her. You stay. She didn't move. She just watched the others leave, her backpack still hanging from one shoulder. When the doors finally closed, only 5 people were left in the room. The judge, Madison, the man in the suit, the 2 other officials, and the court reporter in the corner, who looked like she had no idea if she was supposed to keep typing or not. The judge ran a hand over his face. This can't be real. The man in the suit opened the folder and dropped it on the bench in front of the judge. Inside were photos, documents, notes. The judge flipped through them, getting more and more shaken with every page. Madison stood quietly, still as a statue. Where did you get this? The judge finally whispered. The man turned to Madison. From her, he said. The judge's head snapped up. Madison didn't flinch. She was no longer just a girl in a hoodie. She was someone else entirely. But the truth hadn't fully come out. Not yet. And the judge, who had just mocked her moments ago, was about to learn he had made a very big mistake. 3 weeks earlier, in the back of the bookstore, Madison sat cross-legged on the floor surrounded by books, papers, and her laptop. She had begun compiling a document she titled Operation Dalton. It was her biggest project yet, a full defense argument for Mr. Dalton, complete with evidence charts, case precedents, and witness statements. She even tracked down an old security guard from the pharmacy where Mr. Dalton once worked. The man had been fired months ago and had a grudge against the new manager, the same person accusing Mr. Dalton of theft. I saw him messing with the records. The guard had told her over a scratchy phone call. Changing numbers. Thought it was weird. I told my boss. Next thing I knew, I was out the door. Madison wrote down every word. Then she used a fake name and emailed the story to several local law clinics, pretending to be a legal intern. Only one replied. a man named Tyler Briggs, a junior investigator with a federal legal review board. He was young, new to the job, and curious. She sent him her research. He emailed back one word, impressive. Then a second email followed, can we talk? They did. And that was how the folder ended up in the courtroom 3 weeks later. But before all of that, just after Madison began helping people quietly from the bookstore, something happened that nearly ended everything. One night, after closing the shop, she walked home alone. The town was quiet, the streets lit by orange lamps. She was only a block from her house when she heard footsteps behind her, fast ones. She turned. A shadow moved toward her. Hey, she called out. Who's there? No answer. She started walking faster. So did the footsteps. Then, a hand grabbed her shoulder. She spun around, ready to scream, but stopped. It was a teenager. A boy, older than her by a couple of years, with a face that looked more tired than dangerous. Please, he said, breathing hard. I need your help. She stared at him. You scared me. I'm sorry. I didn't know how else to find you. My sister said you helped her with the rent case. Which sister? Jenny. The one with the baby. Madison lowered her backpack slowly. What's wrong? They're trying to charge me with shoplifting. But I didn't do it. I swear. I was in the store. Yeah, but I didn't steal anything. I just ran because I got scared when the alarm went off. Madison sighed. She believed him, but she also knew no one else would. He handed her the charge sheet. She looked it over under the streetlight. You need to go to court, she said. When's your date? Tomorrow. That's not enough time. I know, but can you help? She looked into his eyes. He wasn't lying. She nodded. They stayed up all night on her porch going over the details. She even created a timeline of where he was and which camera angles to check at the store. She didn't sleep. The next day, she sat in the courtroom gallery pretending to be just another student. When the boy's name was called, she watched his assigned lawyer fumble with papers and stumble through weak arguments. Then she saw the prosecutor hand the judge a security video. Her heart sank. She thought they were doomed. But as the judge hit play, something strange happened. The footage clearly showed a different boy, same jacket, different height, different shoes, slipping the item into his bag and leaving while her new friend was looking at the magazine rack. Madison gasped. The judge paused the video. I believe we have the wrong person, he said. Case dismissed. The boy looked at Madison in the gallery and mouthed, Thank you. She smiled back. That was a low moment turned high. A close call. But the next high? That was in the courtroom, when the man in the suit pulled the judge aside. And the next low? That came when the judge turned back to Madison and said, This changes everything. But it also means you've been pretending to be something you're not. You could be charged. Madison's heart dropped. What are you going to do? She asked quietly. The judge didn't answer right away. Instead, he tapped his gavel gently and said, Bring in the defendant. Let's see if this girl really knows what she's doing. And with that, the doors opened. Mr. Dalton was brought in, looking frail and confused, his wrists cuffed and his eyes wide with fear. Madison stood tall, shaking but determined. It was time to defend him, even if it meant risking everything. And just as she stepped forward to speak, a sharp voice cut across the room. That girl doesn't belong here. She's not a lawyer. This is illegal. Another man had entered the courtroom. A large man in an expensive suit, briefcase in hand, his tie flapping behind him like a flag of war. The room spun. Madison turned, and the man pointed right at her. I'm pressing charges. The man's voice rang through the courtroom like a fire alarm. I'm pressing charges, he repeated, walking straight toward the judge's bench. This girl is impersonating legal counsel. She's broken multiple laws. If you don't remove her immediately, I will. The tension in the room was thick, almost like the air had frozen. Mr. Dalton looked terrified. The bailiff stepped forward, unsure if he should grab Madison or not. Tyler Briggs, the man in the blue suit who had burst in earlier, stood in the middle of it all, watching carefully. Madison didn't move. Her heart pounded so hard she thought it might burst. But she didn't show it. Not on her face. She kept her hands at her sides and her voice steady. I never said I was an attorney, she said. I didn't file paperwork under a false name. I didn't accept money. I only researched and shared information with people who needed help. That's not illegal. The man in the expensive suit scoffed. Don't play smart with me. You walked into this courtroom and spoke as if you had a license to do so. That's enough to get you detained. Tyler stepped forward now. With all due respect, he said calmly. You might want to read this before you continue. He pulled a document from his folder and handed it to the judge. The judge glanced over it. Then again, his eyebrows lifted. This is a recommendation letter, the judge said slowly. From the U.S. Legal Youth Scholars Program? Madison didn't say a word. Tyler nodded. She submitted a case review using a pseudonym. They ranked it higher than most third-year law students. When I looked into who submitted it, I found her. And everything she's done? Every case she's helped with? I verified it all. She hasn't broken a single law. Not one. The courtroom was silent. The angry lawyer's face twisted. She's 16. 17 next month, Madison corrected, her voice still steady. And again, I never claimed to be anything other than someone who wants to help. The judge rubbed his temples. He looked like someone who had just stepped into a room expecting a small problem and instead found a wildfire. Finally, he looked up. Mr. Landry, he said to the angry lawyer, you're out of line. If what Mr. Briggs says is true, then this young lady has only helped people understand their rights, which, by the way, is not illegal unless she represented herself falsely or accepted payment, which she didn't. Mr. Landry was fuming now. You're going to let a child stand here and embarrass the entire legal system? The judge looked at Madison again. She might be young, but she's clearly brilliant. And she's helped more people in the last few months than some lawyers do in a year. So yes, she stays. At least for now. Landry stormed out of the courtroom without another word, muttering threats under his breath. Madison let out a breath she didn't realize she had been holding. Her knees were shaking, but she stayed upright. Barely. The judge turned to her. I'm giving you one chance. That's all. If you really believe Mr. Dalton is innocent, you can explain why. But the moment you step out of line, just once, I shut it down. Understand? She nodded. Good. Then proceed. Madison stepped forward slowly. Mr. Dalton looked up at her, confused. Maddie, he whispered. What are you doing here? She smiled gently at him. Helping you. She turned to the judge and began. Your Honor, the prosecution says Mr. Dalton stole medication and altered pharmacy records. But none of the digital logs match his login ID. In fact, the times listed don't even align with his shifts. I've gathered time-stamped employee access data from the pharmacy's internal system. I also have a witness statement from a former employee who saw another staff member tampering with the logs. The judge raised an eyebrow. A witness? Yes, Jacob Finch, a former security guard who was fired after reporting that the new pharmacy manager was manipulating records. I have a signed statement from him and a call recording, with his permission. Tyler Briggs stepped forward, handing copies of the evidence to the court clerk. Madison kept going. In addition, I reviewed camera footage obtained through public request, security videos that the prosecution didn't include in their evidence. They clearly show Mr. Dalton following procedure, clocking in and out properly, and never once entering the medication room alone. She took a breath. The real problem is that the pharmacy's current manager has a history of suspicious activity. I dug up 2 past complaints that were settled quietly, both for data tampering. The judge's mouth fell slightly open. Tyler added, I confirmed those complaints. She's under investigation now. The judge sat back in his chair. This is a lot, he said, stunned. You did all this? Madison nodded. I reviewed chain of custody, audit logs, staff schedules, and disciplinary records, she said. All of it points away from Mr. Dalton. The courtroom was still again. Even the court reporter had stopped typing. Finally, the judge spoke. I'll need to review the materials thoroughly. But, based on what I've seen so far, I'm issuing a stay on Mr. Dalton's case. He'll be released today, pending further investigation. Charges are suspended. Madison's eyes filled with tears. Mr. Dalton sat in stunned silence. Did she just win? He asked softly. She nodded and ran to him, wrapping him in a hug. You're going home, she whispered. The judge stood slowly. Miss Reed, he said, using her real name now. I don't know where you learned all this. But you've changed this courtroom today. She turned to him, eyes still watery. I didn't do it for that. I just wanted to help people who didn't have anyone. He nodded. That's the heart of justice. But it doesn't change the fact that you're walking a dangerous line. The system doesn't like being challenged from the outside. I know, she said quietly. And there will be people who want to stop you. People like Mr. Landry. I'm not afraid, she said. Maybe you should be, the judge replied. Because now, everyone's going to be watching you. And just then, The courtroom door opened again. A woman in a gray suit walked in. She had a badge on her belt and a look in her eyes that was sharper than any knife. "I'm Agent Collins with the State Bar Investigation Unit," she announced. "I'm looking for a Madison Reed." Everyone froze. Madison turned. "I need to speak with you privately," the agent said. "Right now." Tyler stepped forward. "She hasn't done anything wrong." The agent didn't flinch. "Then she has nothing to worry about." Madison swallowed hard. What now? Had she gone too far? Was everything about to come crashing down? She looked at Mr. Dalton, now free. She looked at the judge, still shocked. She looked at Tyler, quietly nodding at her to be strong. Then, she stepped forward and followed Agent Collins through the door. The hallway outside the courtroom was long and cold, with buzzing fluorescent lights and walls painted the color of oatmeal. Madison walked beside Agent Collins, her footsteps echoing off the linoleum floor. She clutched her backpack tighter than ever before. The agent didn't speak as they walked. Not until they reached a small conference room at the far end of the corridor. She opened the door and motioned for Madison to enter. "Sit." Madison sat. Her heart was racing. She tried to keep her face calm, but her palms were sweaty. Agent Collins closed the door behind them and set a folder on the table. Then she sat across from Madison and folded her hands. "Madison Reed," she said, reading from a paper. "Age 16, soon to be 17. No legal training. No law school. No license. Yet, you've been advising individuals on legal matters for over 4 months. You've appeared in a courtroom without credentials. You've accessed court documents, evidence logs, and witness statements. Some of those are confidential." Madison stayed quiet. Agent Collins leaned forward. "You understand how serious this is?" "I never pretended to be a lawyer," Madison said quietly. "I never signed anything under a false name. I never took money. I just helped people." Agent Collins stared at her. Her face was unreadable. Madison swallowed. "I know I'm not supposed to do what I did. But what was I supposed to do? Watch people get thrown out of their homes? Fired unfairly? Arrested when they didn't do anything wrong? You were supposed to go to school," Collins snapped. "Not build a secret law office in a bookstore." Madison shrank slightly in her seat. But then Collins did something unexpected. She reached into her folder and pulled out a stack of letters. Typed, neatly formatted. Some with logos from legal clinics, others with handwritten notes. "These," Collins said, tapping the stack, "are testimonials. From every person you helped. Every single one. Including that boy from the shoplifting case. The mother with the baby. The veteran. Even the assistant principal from Lincoln High said your research helped him stop a wrongful expulsion." Madison blinked. "Wait, you have all those?" "I asked for them," Collins replied. "Because I don't just investigate violations. I also evaluate potential." Madison didn't say a word. Collins leaned back in her chair. "What you've done is walk a very thin line. Most people fall. You didn't. But the truth is, you are unlicensed. If the state bar wanted to punish you, they could. Easily." Madison's stomach dropped. "But they won't." Madison looked up, startled. "Because we're going to do something else instead," Collins said. She pulled a small card from her jacket pocket and slid it across the table. It read, "Youth Legal Scholars Initiative, Special Consideration Program." "We have a program," Collins explained, "for young minds who show extraordinary promise in law and justice. It's competitive, invitation only, and no one your age has ever been recommended until now." Madison stared at the card like it was made of gold. "You'd still have to finish school," Collins said. "Still go to law school. Still take the bar like everyone else. But we'll fast-track your application. Give you access to resources most pre-law students don't get until college. You'll be mentored by real attorneys. Trained the right way." Madison's heart soared. But then she frowned. "What's the catch?" Collins smiled faintly. "You have to stop practicing now. No more courtroom cameos. No more advice to strangers. Until you're licensed, you're just a student again. Understand?" Madison sat back, staring at the card. "But what if someone needs help tomorrow? Then you send them to someone who's licensed," Collins said. "You've already done more than most adults would have tried. Now it's time to learn how to do it the right way." Madison looked down at the card again. She could hardly believe it. Her heart felt like it might explode, but in the best way possible. She finally nodded. "Okay, I'll do it." Collins smiled and stood. "Good. You've got a bright future, Madison. Just don't burn out before you get there." Back at the bookstore, later that evening, Madison stepped inside to find her Uncle Tom wiping grease off his hands. When he saw her, he raised an eyebrow. "Well, you going to jail or Harvard?" Madison laughed. "Something in between." She told him everything about the courtroom, the judge, Mr. Dalton going free, and the special program. Tom didn't say much. He just listened. Then he pulled her into a hug. "Your parents would have been so proud of you." She hugged him back tightly, blinking back tears. The next morning, the newspaper hit the front porch with a loud thump. Madison opened the door, picked it up, and froze. There, on the front page, was a picture of her in the courtroom. The headline read, "Teen legal prodigy stuns judge, frees innocent man." She stared at it for a long time. Her name was out. The story had gone public. Her quiet days at the bookstore were over. She closed the door behind her and sat down with the paper, reading the article 3 times. Then, just as she reached the end, her phone buzzed. It was a text. Unknown number. "Madison, I need your help. It's my brother. He's in real trouble. Please don't ignore this." Madison stared at the message. Her fingers hovered over the screen. She had just promised Agent Collins she'd stop. She had just been given the chance of a lifetime. But now someone needed her again. She took a breath and replied, "Tell me everything." The text message stayed on her screen like it was glowing. "Madison, I need your help. It's my brother. He's in real trouble. Please don't ignore this." She stared at it for a long time. Her fingers tingled. Her heart battled with her brain. Collins had been clear. No more legal help until she was properly trained. She had a golden ticket in her hand, a spot in a national program, fast track to law school, access to mentors who could teach her everything. It was everything she had dreamed about. But someone needed her now. She tapped on the contact and saw only a first name, Ava. She didn't recognize it. "Madison, what kind of trouble?" The response came back fast. "Ava, he's being accused of assault. But he didn't do it. Please, they're going to arrest him today." "Ava, we don't have a lawyer. We don't have anyone." Madison swallowed hard. Assault wasn't a small case. That wasn't missing a rent payment or getting expelled. This was serious. If her help went sideways, even a little, it could ruin a person's life. She closed her eyes. This wasn't a game. Not anymore. Her fingers hovered again. Then she took a breath and replied, "Madison, I can't represent him. I'm not allowed to give legal advice anymore. Ava, please, just tell me what to do, what to say. They're treating him like he's already guilty. Ava, he has bruises. But he was trying to defend someone. And the guy who attacked him got away clean." Madison bit her lip. This sounded bad. Really bad. And unfair. She looked around the bookstore. The front counter. Her stacks of papers. Her carefully organized folders. All of it had been packed away since yesterday, like part of her had been locked in a closet. But it was still there. She tapped again. "Madison, send me everything you have. Names. Times. Photos. Messages. Anything. Ava, I'll send it all." And she did. Within 5 minutes, Madison's phone filled with images and text messages. Photos of Ava's brother, a tall kid with freckles and a black eye. Text logs showing messages to his friend, and a shaky video clip from someone's phone that showed him stepping between 2 boys fighting. Madison's eyes narrowed. The other boy, the supposed victim, had thrown the first punch, and Ava's brother was trying to stop it. In the background, someone shouted, "Get him, Trey," right before the camera shook and the video ended. Madison watched it again, and again. Each time, the same thing stood out. Trey was not the aggressor. Her hands moved on their own. She pulled out her notebook, flipped to a fresh page, started writing. She knew she wasn't supposed to do this, but how could she not? The next day, Madison stood at the back of the police station, just outside the doors where families waited while officers gave cold explanations and handed over arrest forms. Ava paced the floor in front of her. She looked younger in person, maybe 15, with messy curls and tired eyes. "They're taking him in," she whispered. They didn't even listen. They didn't ask what really happened. Madison nodded. "Did you bring the copy of the video?" Ava held up her phone. "Right here." "Good," Madison said. "Don't show it yet. Not until they process him. Then ask for the attending officer and tell him you have new evidence." "But what if they don't care?" "They'll care," Madison said. "Trust me." As they waited, Madison kept her head low. She wasn't supposed to be here. If Agent Collins found out, she shoved the thought away. An hour later, Ava's brother was brought in, handcuffed, bruised, eyes wide with fear. The officer barely said a word to him as they led him to the back. Ava ran up to the desk, breathless. Please, I have a video. You need to see this. The officer looked annoyed. Miss, you'll have to wait. Madison stepped forward. Under state law, if you're presented with exculpatory evidence before charges are filed, you're required to review it. The officer blinked. Who are you? Madison froze. But Ava jumped in. She's my tutor. She just studies this stuff. The officer looked suspicious, but motioned for Ava to show the video. She played it right there, over the counter. The officer watched, and then watched again. He grunted. Where was this taken? Behind the rec center, Ava said. Yesterday, just before 4. The officer scribbled something down and left the desk. 10 minutes later, another officer came out and quietly took Ava aside. Madison couldn't hear what they were saying, but she saw Ava start crying. Then she nodded. Then she smiled. A minute later, Ava turned back to Madison. They're letting him go. Madison smiled. But before she could say a word, she heard a voice behind her. A voice she recognized instantly. You just couldn't stay out of it, could you? Madison turned slowly. Agent Collins stood in the hallway, arms crossed. Her face wasn't angry, but it wasn't happy either. I got a call this morning, Collins said, from a police station wondering why a high school girl was quoting statute numbers to officers. Madison swallowed hard. I didn't mean to, she started. I told you. Collins interrupted. No more courtroom stunts. No more pretending. I wasn't pretending, Madison said. I was just helping. Do you know how dangerous that is? Collins snapped. If you were wrong, if that video didn't help, you could have destroyed that boy's chances in court. But I wasn't wrong. That's not the point. Madison looked down. Collins sighed and rubbed her forehead. You're a genius, Madison. But geniuses still have to follow the rules. The law isn't about being right. It's about being careful. Responsible. If you want to fight for people, you can't risk burning down the house to save one room. Madison didn't reply. Then Collins said something Madison didn't expect. I'm not kicking you out of the program. Yet. But you're on probation now. One more move like this, and you're done. Understand? Madison nodded, slow and heavy. Yes, ma'am. Collins turned to leave. But before she walked away, she looked back and said quietly, You were right, though. That video was enough. You saved that kid. Then she was gone. Madison sat down hard on the bench. Ava sat beside her. You okay? Yeah, Madison said. Just got my dream and almost lost it. Ava smiled and offered her a soda from the vending machine. Well, I think you're awesome. Madison chuckled. Thanks. That makes one of us. And just when she thought the day couldn't get more intense, her phone buzzed. A new message. No name. We've been watching you. We know what you did in court. You're not safe anymore. Be careful who you trust. Madison's hands went cold. She read it again. And again. Was it a prank? Or was someone actually after her? She didn't know. But one thing was certain. Something big was coming. Madison stared at the message, her fingers frozen above the screen. We've been watching you. We know what you did in court. You're not safe anymore. Be careful who you trust. Her eyes scanned it over and over again, each time feeling a little colder, like the temperature in the air had dropped 5 degrees. She looked around the police station lobby. No one seemed to be watching her. No hidden cameras, no suspicious figures. Ava was still sipping her soda, her legs swinging as she sat on the bench beside her. Madison, Ava asked, nudging her. You okay? Madison forced a smile. Yeah, I'm fine. But she wasn't. Her mind spun. Who could have sent that message? A prank? A bully from school? No, it didn't feel like that. This message was too specific. Too real. Her phone buzzed again. Keep playing lawyer, and someone's going to get hurt. Madison's breath caught. This wasn't just about her. Who was watching? Who knew what she did in court? Her heart pounded. She quickly screenshotted the messages and backed them up to her encrypted folder. Then she put the phone in airplane mode and tucked it in her bag. For the first time in a long time, she felt scared. Really scared. Back at the bookstore, Uncle Tom was at the front desk eating a sandwich and reading a comic book when Madison walked in. You look like you've seen a ghost, he said, sitting up. Bad day. Madison hesitated. No, just long. She didn't tell him about the messages. Not yet. She didn't want him to worry. Besides, what would she even say? That someone might be following her? That they knew what she did in court? That she was afraid to even turn on her phone? No. She needed to think. She went upstairs to her tiny room above the shop and locked the door. Then she turned her phone back on. No new messages. She scrolled through her apps, looking for anything strange. Any new downloads. Any signs someone had hacked her phone. Nothing. She ran her anti-spyware app, just in case. Clean. Still, her gut told her it wasn't a joke. It was a warning. But why now? She hadn't even done anything huge yet. Yes, she got Mr. Dalton out. Yes, she stopped an unfair arrest. But this wasn't national news. Unless. She opened the newspaper article from the courtroom again and scrolled down. At the bottom, in small print, was a name. Jeremy Sloan, defense attorney for the opposing side, declined to comment. Jeremy Sloan. She remembered him now, tall, pale, smooth-talking. The one who laughed when she objected in court. The one who rolled his eyes when she quoted legal code. He had looked angry when the judge started taking her seriously. Was this connected? She typed his name into the legal database she still had access to. His name popped up on over 200 cases. Most were civil, some criminal. He worked for a firm that handled everything from evictions to corporate lawsuits. But what caught her eye was something else entirely. One of his clients, a pharmaceutical executive, had just lost a small case the same week Madison freed Mr. Dalton. The pharmacy, the same one where Dalton had worked. Her pulse quickened. Could Sloan have sent that message? Was he trying to scare her into stopping? She didn't know, but it made sense. Too much sense. That night, Madison couldn't sleep. She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, thinking about everything that had happened in the last 2 weeks. The courtroom, the program, Agent Collins, Ava's brother, the message. She had tried to do the right thing. Was that wrong? She turned over and opened her laptop. Her fingers hesitated, then began typing. She wrote everything down. Every detail, every name, every case she had worked on. She saved it all in a protected file labeled, "If something happens." Just in case. Because now she had a feeling someone might not want her story to continue. And she needed to be ready. The next morning, she woke to banging on the bookstore's front door. Her uncle had already gone to the garage. She scrambled out of bed and looked through the upstairs window. A man in a suit stood at the door. Tall, gray hair, sunglasses, a briefcase in one hand. He wasn't from around here. Her heart skipped. She didn't go down. She waited. The man knocked once more, then slid something under the door and walked away. Madison waited until he was gone, then tiptoed downstairs and picked up the envelope. It was blank. Inside was a single sheet of paper. Typed. Stop digging. This is your final warning. No signature. No logo. No return address. Her blood turned to ice. This wasn't just a message. It was a threat. And whoever it was, they weren't bluffing. She had 2 choices now. Back off. Or dig deeper. She stood in the middle of the bookstore, staring at the paper in her hand. Her heart said, keep going. People need you. Her head said, turn it all over to Agent Collins and walk away. But her gut? Her gut told her that someone powerful had something to hide. And she was the only one who had seen it. She walked behind the counter, opened her notebook, and wrote one line at the top of a blank page. Find out what Jeremy Sloan is hiding. Then she made a plan. But just as she started writing, the lights in the shop flickered, then went out. The entire block went dark. Power outage? Or something else? She didn't get to find out. Because just then, the front window shattered. A brick landed on the floor with a thud. Wrapped in newspaper, Madison rushed forward, heart pounding, and opened the paper. Written in thick black marker, for terrifying words stared back at her. Next time it's you. The glass crunched under Madison's sneakers as she stepped carefully around the shattered window. Her hands were shaking, but she forced herself to stay calm. She stared down at the brick wrapped in newspaper, the message still burning into her mind. Next time it's you. Her heart pounded. Her breath came in shallow gasps. Someone had just tried to scare her. Really scare her. And it worked. But not the way they wanted. She didn't feel like running. She felt angry. She picked up the brick, careful not to touch the part with the message, and carried it behind the counter. Her fingers trembled as she dialed a number she never thought she'd call this soon. Agent Collins picked up on the second ring. Reed, she said. You better have a good reason for calling this early. They smashed my window, Madison said. There was a pause. What? They threw a brick through the glass. It had a threat on it. Another pause. Then, are you safe? I am now. But someone's warning me to back off. You at the bookstore? Yes. Stay there. Don't touch anything else. I'm on my way. She hung up. Madison leaned against the counter, her mind racing. Whoever did this wasn't bluffing anymore. They were watching her, and they were getting bold. But why? Why go this far? Unless... She pulled open her notebook and flipped to her notes on Jeremy Sloan. Something about the pharmacy, the paperwork, the missing login times. It was all too clean. Too easy. The man who replaced Dalton, he had suddenly resigned last week. No explanation. No news coverage. Just gone. And Jeremy Sloan had quietly dropped his connection to the case days after Madison exposed it in court. Her gut told her one thing. This wasn't just about Mr. Dalton. That case had touched something bigger. Something someone wanted buried. And now they were trying to bury her too. 20 minutes later, Agent Collins stood in the bookstore, snapping photos of the broken window, the message, and the brick. I'm putting a trace on the paper, she said. But I doubt we'll find much. This kind of threat doesn't come from amateurs. You think it's Sloan? Madison asked. Collins didn't answer right away. I think Sloan has friends. The kind who handle problems quietly. People with money. People who don't like losing control. Madison nodded. So what now? Now, Collins said. Now you disappear for a while. What? I'm pulling you from the bookstore. Today, you'll stay with a Minter family from the program. Off the radar. You'll still study law, but no more cases. No more helping anyone. You're too hot right now. No. Collins looked up. No. Madison's jaw tightened. If I back down now, they win. They're threatening kids. Framing people. Lying in court. This isn't just some case. It's something bigger. I can feel it. You want to take on corruption at 16? Collins asked, stunned. Madison, this isn't a TV show. This is real life. You mess with the wrong person and you don't just lose a scholarship, you disappear. Madison's voice shook, but she held her ground. Then train me. Help me do it right. Don't hide me, guide me. Collins stared at her, then sighed. You're either going to be a brilliant attorney or a very famous cautionary tale. I'll try not to be both. Collins cracked the faintest smile. All right, fine. But we do it my way. Step 1, protection. Like bodyguards. Like surveillance, she said. Encrypted messages only. No more unscheduled court visits. And we move you out of here tonight. You're done living alone. Madison hesitated. What about my uncle? He'll be safe. But you? You need to disappear. Madison looked around the bookstore. The place where she found her purpose. Where her parents' favorite books still sat on shelves. Where she took her first case. She didn't want to go, but she knew she had to. That night, she packed her things. Just one duffel bag. A few clothes. Her legal notebooks. Her worn copy of the Constitution. Her uncle hugged her tight at the front door. You come back to me, kid, he said. I will, she whispered. Then she climbed into the black SUV waiting outside. The man in the driver's seat nodded once, but said nothing. Agent Collins sat beside him, typing something on her tablet. Madison looked out the window as the bookstore faded into the distance. She didn't know where they were going. She just knew this was only the beginning. 2 days later, in a quiet suburban house far from her hometown, Madison sat in a guest bedroom with white curtains and a desk covered in legal books Collins had brought for her. It was quiet here. Too quiet. She felt like she'd been dropped into hiding. She wanted to scream. To do something. To move. Instead, she opened her laptop and reviewed the one file she'd kept from the Dalton case. Then she found it. A single name. Buried deep in the witness list. Someone who had signed off on the pharmacy's digital logs. A technician named Robin Ziegler. She had never interviewed him. No one had. She quickly searched online. Nothing. No social media. No LinkedIn. No work history. Weird. She cross-referenced his name with public records. Still nothing. Then, finally, one hit. An old email from a forum for pharmacy IT staff. Robin Ziegler. Mentioned one time, 7 months ago. I found something bad in the logs. Management told me to delete it. I won't. If something happens to me, someone needs to know. Look for the February 12th log backup. It's still out there. Madison's heart slammed in her chest. This was it. The missing piece. Someone else knew. And if that log still existed, it could expose whoever was behind the setup, and maybe more. She copied the post and backed it up. She didn't know where Robin Ziegler was, but she was going to find him. And when she did, the truth would finally come out. Just then, her phone buzzed with a new alert from the program's secure app. New mentor assigned. Judge Nathan Harwood. Meet tomorrow. 9 a.m. Madison's eyes widened. Judge Harwood. The same judge who had mocked her in court. The same judge whose jaw dropped when she quoted federal statutes without blinking. She was going to face him again. Only this time, he knew exactly who she was. Madison arrived at the courthouse the next morning with her hoodie pulled tight over her head and her backpack slung low on one shoulder. She stepped through the marble lobby like she was walking into a lion's den. The halls echoed with footsteps and the low hum of voices behind office doors. She knew this place well by now, knew the creaky elevator, the faded portrait of the first judge hung crooked near the vending machines, the scent of paper and coffee. But today was different. Today she wasn't here to sneak into a courtroom or challenge a ruling. She was here to meet a man who once humiliated her in front of a full house. Judge Nathan Harwood, her new mentor. The same judge who shouted, "You think you know the law, little girl?" The same judge who went pale when she quoted federal code by memory. Now, he'd been assigned to help her. Madison wasn't sure whether to laugh or run. She reached his office door and stood still for a moment. Then she knocked. "Enter," a voice said from inside. She stepped in. The room was warm and wood-paneled, with tall bookshelves full of thick law volumes and a wall of certificates. Judge Harwood sat behind a massive oak desk, glasses perched on his nose, reading a thick file. He looked up. For a second, neither of them spoke. Then he said, without a smile, "I thought they were joking." Madison blinked. "Excuse me." He closed the file and leaned back. "When I saw your name on my mentorship docket, I thought it was a prank." Madison braced herself. "But," he continued, "then I reviewed your files. The Dalton case. The incident at the police station. The fact that you almost made a senior prosecutor look like a fool." He removed his glasses slowly. "I've been on this bench for 22 years, Miss Reed. And in all that time, I've never met anyone, child or adult, who frightened me in court." He paused. "Until you." Madison didn't know what to say. "I'm sorry. Don't be," he said. "It was a compliment, one I never gave before. But don't let it go to your head, because now you're under my wing, and I don't tolerate recklessness." She nodded quickly. "Yes, sir. You have talent," he said. "But talent without discipline? That's just noise. What I plan to do is teach you how to build a storm." Madison's eyes widened. Harwood stood and motioned to a side room. "Let's begin." For the next 5 hours, Judge Harwood drilled her harder than any teacher she'd ever had. He threw case files across the desk. He shouted hypotheticals. He made her argue both sides of the same case, twice. Madison's brain felt like it was being lifted and rewired. At first, she stumbled, missed things, got confused. But then something clicked. She matched his pace, matched his tone, matched his fire. By noon, he was grinning. "Your brain runs like a Ferrari," he said. "Now we just need to teach it not to crash into trees." Madison laughed, wiping sweat from her forehead. "You'll return every day for 2 weeks," he added, "and we'll make something real out of you." But what?" she asked. He narrowed his eyes. "Stay away from your old cases. Especially Sloan." Her face fell. "I know what happened at the bookstore," he said. "The brick. The message. You think no one's watching. Then why won't you help me expose him?" she asked. "Because you're not ready," he said firmly. "You shine a light on men like that before you're armed properly. They don't run. They bury the light." "I'm not afraid." He leaned forward, voice low. "You should be." That night, back in the quiet suburban house she now called home, Madison sat at the desk, reviewing the names she found again. Robin Ziegler, the missing IT technician. No new updates. No social profiles. No job listings. It was like he'd disappeared. But Madison didn't give up easily. She dug deeper. She searched local forums, old school directories, digital business registries. And finally, she found something. A tiny comment on a tech message board from 8 months ago, using a handle that matched the one in the pharmacy thread. It read, "If you're reading this, then I'm probably gone. I kept the backup, but they'll never find it. It's not in the cloud. It's on the drive." Her pulse jumped. The drive. But what drive? She clicked through the commenter's post history, reading thread after thread. Most were about outdated hardware, encryption methods, and weird tech jokes. Then, in one old post about vintage tech, he said something strange. "I still use my old zip disk drive. Call me paranoid." Madison Googled it. Zip disk, an ancient, clunky external storage device from the early 2000s. Practically extinct. No one used them anymore. Unless they wanted something impossible to hack or trace. She sat back in her chair. If Robin Ziegler backed up the pharmacy logs on a zip disk, there was a good chance that was the last piece of proof she needed. But first, she had to find him. Just then, her phone buzzed. It was from a restricted number. She hesitated, then answered. A voice, low, raspy, and nervous, came through the line. "You've been looking for me," the voice said. "Robin," Madison whispered. "Yes, and you need to stop. They're already watching you. They came after me, and I ran. I can't help you. You have the proof. You can clear everything." "No," he said, almost in a whisper. "You don't understand. It's not just about one pharmacy. Sloan's firm, they've been hiding things. Silencing people. It goes higher than you think." "Where are you?" she asked. "Let me help." Silence. Then, "I'll meet you. One time. Public place. No cameras. No cops. No mentors. When?" "Tomorrow. 6:30 p.m. The old train station off Route 14. Come alone. If you bring anyone, I disappear forever." Then the line went dead. Madison's hand shook as she lowered the phone. She had what she wanted. The source. The meeting. The final piece. But she also knew this was a trap, or the key to everything. And either way, she was going. The next day crawled by like a snail stuck in molasses. Madison sat through her mentorship session with Judge Harwood, barely hearing half of what he said. Her mind kept drifting to one place, the old train station on Route 14. Harwood didn't miss her distracted mood. "You're thinking about the case again, aren't you?" he said as he circled behind her like a hawk watching its prey. "No, sir," she lied. "Don't insult me, Reed," he snapped. "Your eyes are following the law books, but your brain's somewhere else." "Where?" She hesitated. "Nowhere important." He stopped in front of her, staring her down. "I told you to stay away from Sloan. From that rabbit hole. You poke around in the wrong place, someone will get hurt." Madison looked up slowly. "They already tried." His brow furrowed. "They threw a brick through my window. Threatened me. Broke into my files. And now, someone who might have proof is willing to talk. Just once." Harwood's expression darkened. "You have a location?" "Yes." "Then you tell me, and let me send someone." "No," she said. "He said if I bring anyone, he disappears forever." Harwood walked over to his bookshelf and leaned against it. "This is beyond mentorship," he said. "This is a federal investigation now." "Then treat it like one," Madison shot back. "But don't ask me to stay out of it when the only reason we're here is because I didn't." He stared at her for a long time. Then, quietly, he said, "Don't die trying to be the hero, Reed." She nodded. "I'm not trying to be the hero. I'm trying to tell the truth." 6:27 p.m. The sun was low and gold, casting long shadows over the rusted train tracks that led to the abandoned station. Madison stood near a broken bench, the wind tugging at her hoodie. Her backpack felt heavy with copies of everything she knew. Names, files, court documents, timelines. If anything happened to her, someone would still have the truth. She had sent a location pin to a secret drive just in case. One message would be triggered if she didn't return in 2 hours. The station was quiet. Broken windows. Vines climbing up the stone walls. A hollowed-out ticket booth. Birds called from the trees, but otherwise, silence. At exactly 6:30, a figure stepped out from behind a crumbling support beam. Thin, nervous, early 30s, with a shaggy beard and eyes that never stopped moving. "Robin," Madison called. He nodded, hands in his pockets. "You alone?" "Yes." "Okay," he whispered, glancing over his shoulder. "Then listen fast." He stepped closer, his voice low and rushed. "I was hired to clean the logs after Dalton was accused. I found something weird, multiple entries using Dalton's ID at times when he wasn't even logged in. I traced them back to a ghost account. No name, no audit trail. You saved the backup?" He nodded. "I knew they'd erase everything. So I downloaded the February 12th audit trail to a zip disk and hid it." "Where?" "I mailed it to myself. General delivery. Post office box. Under a fake name. But I never went back for it. I was followed. Warned off." Madison frowned. "Why are you telling me now?" "Because I saw what you did in court," Robin said. "I didn't believe anyone could fight them. Not until you did." Madison stepped closer. "Where's the package?" He reached into his coat pocket and froze. Madison saw it at the same time he did. A red dot. On his chest. "Get down," she shouted. But it was too late. A single pop cracked through the air, more like a sharp slap than a gunshot. Robin jerked back, a burst of red blooming on his jacket, and crumpled to the ground. "Robin!" Madison screamed. She dropped beside him, hands shaking as she tried to stop the bleeding. He gasped, clutching her arm. "Locker 118. Preston. P.O. Box. 4217. Then his body went still. Madison's breath caught in her throat. She looked up. There was no one in sight. No footsteps. No rustling. Just wind. She pulled out her phone, heart racing, and called Agent Collins. "Code red," she said, voice shaking. "I need a team. I need backup. Someone's dead. I have a location." Then she hung up and ran. 30 minutes later, Collins' car skidded into the lot behind the train station. Police cars followed. Flashing lights lit up the broken bricks and metal rails. But Madison didn't wait. She was already gone. She knew where she had to go. Locker 118. Preston Postal Center. And she had to get there before they did. Before whoever silenced Robin could finish cleaning up. She took the city bus. Switched routes twice. Walked the last 10 blocks. She reached the Preston Postal Center as the sun fully set, its flickering sign glowing weakly in the dark. The building was half empty. She moved fast, ducked around a clerk, and found the wall of lockers near the back. Locker 118. She yanked it open. Inside was a bubble-wrapped envelope. Her hands trembled as she pulled it out and tore it open. There it was. The zip disk. Her chest filled with breath she hadn't realized she was holding. She had it. The proof. But as she turned to leave, someone grabbed her from behind. A gloved hand clamped over her mouth, and a voice whispered in her ear, "You should have stopped when you had the chance." Madison's scream never made it past the gloved hand clamped over her mouth. Her heart thundered in her chest as the stranger dragged her backward between 2 rows of locked mailboxes. The zip disk pressed tightly in her palm. She wouldn't let go, no matter what. "Quiet," the voice hissed in her ear. "No one gets hurt if you cooperate." His grip tightened. Every instinct in Madison's body screamed run, but her mind stayed sharp. She remembered what Judge Harwood drilled into her. Panic is a luxury you can't afford. So she didn't. She waited, breathed, counted, and just as the man tried to move her toward the back door, Madison acted. She stomped hard on his foot and threw her head backward. The back of her skull hit his chin with a sickening crack. He grunted in pain and loosened his grip. She slipped out of his hold and bolted down the hallway, shoving past a stunned clerk. "Help!" she shouted. "Someone's trying to grab me." The man didn't chase her. She darted outside, into the cold night, still clutching the zip disk like it was the last spark of light in a tunnel. She didn't stop running until she was 3 blocks away. Only then did she pull out her phone and call Agent Collins. "You need to meet me," she gasped. "Now." They met at a late-night diner off Main Street, quiet and nearly empty. Collins wore a gray hoodie and jeans instead of her usual suit. She slid into the booth opposite Madison and didn't speak at first, just stared at her. "You were supposed to stay away," Collins said finally. Madison dropped the zip disk on the table like it was a trophy. "I found the drive." Collins blinked, then slowly reached out and picked it up. "Is this?" Robin Ziegler mailed it to himself. Before they got to him, Collins went quiet. Very quiet. "What happened to him?" she asked. Madison swallowed hard. "Shot. Right in front of me. Silent weapon. I couldn't see who." Collins clenched her jaw. "This," she said, lifting the disc, "could bring down half of Sloane's firm if what's on it is real." "It is," Madison said. And Robin said it goes higher. He was scared. Said someone in Sloane's circle was covering up fraud across multiple companies. Pharmaceuticals? Yes. Overbilling insurance companies. Faking data. Then using firms like Sloane's to erase the evidence. Collins nodded slowly, sliding the disk into a padded envelope. "I'll get this to digital forensics tonight, under a sealed investigation." "What about me?" Madison asked. "They're hunting me now." "You'll stay somewhere safe," Collins said. "And you won't move until we bring them down." Madison looked down. Her hands were still shaking. Collins reached across the table and touched her fingers. "You did something brave, Madison. Risked everything. But you can't do it alone anymore. Let us take it from here." Madison nodded. But deep down, she knew it wasn't over. The next day, news broke. A major lawsuit filed against Sloane, Drake, and Fairchild, citing new evidence in a long-buried pharmaceutical fraud case. Anonymous whistleblower. Federal inquiry opened. Investigators called in. Madison read every word of the article. They didn't mention her name, but they didn't have to. She knew what she had done, what Robin died for, and it still wasn't enough. Because just when she allowed herself to feel safe again, her phone buzzed. Unknown number. No text. Just an image. A photo of Judge Harwood standing outside his home. The message followed. You took one of ours. We'll take one of yours. Madison's blood turned to ice. She bolted from the couch and grabbed her shoes. Collins shouted from the kitchen. Where are you going? They're going after Harwood, she yelled. Collins was at her side in a second. We'll call it in. No, Madison said. There's no time. She was already running. By the time they reached Judge Harwood's house, the streetlights had just flickered on. His car was in the driveway. The porch light was off. The front gate was open. Too open. Collins drew her sidearm. Stay behind me. They approached the house slowly. No signs of forced entry. No broken windows. But something felt wrong. Collins knocked hard. Judge Harwood? It's Agent Collins. No answer. Madison's heart pounded. She felt like it would shatter her ribs. Collins knocked again. Sir? Are you inside? Still nothing. She pulled a small device from her belt and unlocked the door. They stepped inside carefully. The house was quiet. Too quiet. Then a sound. A groan. From the study. They rushed in. Harwood was slumped in his chair, a small trail of blood running down his temple. Papers scattered everywhere. His laptop screen flickered with static. Judge, Madison shouted. He blinked slowly, groggy. Reed, stay with me, she said. What happened? He tried to speak. They took it. Took what? My case files, sealed ones from 10 years ago. They were after something. Collins called for medical backup. Madison looked around the room. Drawers were pulled out. Cabinets emptied. But one folder sat untouched on the edge of the desk. She grabbed it. Inside were old photographs. And a name she recognized. Charles Halvorson, former client of Sloan's firm. High-ranking pharmaceutical executive. Charged with bribery a decade ago. Case dismissed. No explanation. Madison looked closer. There was a seal in the corner. Classified. Internal court records. She whispered. It goes deeper than we thought. Collins looked over her shoulder. We're not just dealing with a dirty law firm, are we? No, Madison said. Eyes still on the folder. We're dealing with a cover-up that's lasted 10 years. And then, suddenly, Collins' phone buzzed. She looked at the screen. Her face drained of color. They're moving, she said. Feds just intercepted chatter. Sloan's firm is shutting down operations, wiping drives, and going off-grid. They know we're closing in, Madison whispered. We have one shot to get them, Collins said. And Madison looked up with fire in her eyes. Then let's finish this. Rain hammered the black SUVs as they raced down the interstate, wipers slashing across windshields like frantic metronomes. Inside the lead vehicle, Madison sat in the back seat between two federal agents, her hands clenched into fists. In her lap was the folder from Judge Harwood's study, now sealed in a waterproof evidence bag. Beside her, Agent Collins spoke into a headset. Surveillance drone confirms movement at the Sloan property. Multiple hard drives being loaded into unmarked vans. We're 30 minutes out. Do not engage until we arrive. Copy. A voice crackled back. Copy. Madison stared out the rain-specked window. Somewhere up ahead, the people who tried to silence her, who framed innocent men, who threatened her life and nearly killed her mentor, were packing up and disappearing. Unless she stopped them. What happens if they get away? She asked, her voice barely louder than the rain. Collins didn't look at her. Then all this dies in a cloud of shredded paper and burned drives. Sloan has ties deep in state contracts. Black budgets. Ghost companies. They'll vanish, change names, and do it all over again somewhere else. Madison's jaw tightened. We can't let that happen. Collins finally turned. That's why you're here. 30 minutes later, the convoy pulled off the highway and into the woods outside a gated estate surrounded by iron fences and heavy cameras. A private compound, modern, glass, and steel, sat like a fortress in the trees. This is Sloan's safe house, Collins explained. Legal on paper, criminal in purpose. The SUV stopped. Agents piled out, taking positions along the perimeter. Collins handed Madison a small earpiece. You stay with me. You move when I say. If anything feels wrong, you run. Got it. Madison nodded and slid the earpiece into place. The rain had slowed to a mist now, turning the pine needles silver in the moonlight. A voice came through the comms. Target van preparing to leave. I repeat, target van is mobile. Move now, Collins said. They raced forward. The front gate blew open with a pop of compressed air. Agents rushed the compound. Madison followed, ducking low, heart pounding, every sense screaming. Inside, the lights were already off. Files burned in metal bins. Hard drives cracked open on the floor. A dozen figures scrambled to escape through the back. Sloane's not here, one agent shouted. But Madison wasn't looking for Sloane. She was looking for something worse. And then she saw it. A glass case at the far end of the room. Locked. Inside, 4 black binders. Each labeled Halvorsen, C/settlement records. Client A27/clinical trials. Client B49/test cover UPS. Madison Reed, surveillance. Her breath caught. The last binder had her name. She ran forward and smashed the glass with a fire extinguisher. Grabbed all 4 binders. Behind her, someone shouted. She turned just as a man lunged at her, broad-shouldered, gray suit, slicked back hair. Jeremy Sloane. Give me those, he growled, reaching for the binders. Madison stepped back. You kept a file on me? You made yourself a problem, he snarled. I fix problems. By ruining lives? She shouted. By killing witnesses? Framing good people? Covering up poison in medicine? He didn't even blink. You should have stayed in your bookstore. Just then, Collins burst in. Federal agents. Hands where I can see them. Sloane turned to run. Collins fired a warning shot into the ceiling. Try it, she warned. He stopped, slowly raised his hands. Behind him, Madison held the binders tight against her chest. Proof of everything. Names, signatures, emails, falsified reports, payout lists. This was it. The whole operation. In her hands. Sloane turned his head slightly. You have no idea who you're messing with. You think this ends with me? No, Madison said. It ends with the truth. Hours later, Madison sat in a brightly lit government safe house, the smell of coffee and copier paper in the air. Collins placed the 4 binders on the table with a soft thud. These documents will trigger a multi-agency investigation, she said. Sloane's firm. Halvorsen's pharma company. Even their government contracts. Madison sat quietly. You just exposed a $90 million fraud ring, Collins said. I didn't do it alone, Madison replied. Robin died to protect this. Collins nodded. He won't be forgotten. A silence passed. Then Madison asked, what about me? You'll be a hero to some. A threat to others, Collins said. You'll have enemies for a long time. I'm used to that, Madison said with a smirk. Collins chuckled. We'll keep you under protection until this clears. But after that, your life's going to change. How? You'll have a full scholarship waiting at any law school you want, Collins said. Harvard, Stanford, Yale. Take your pick. Every major program will want you. Madison stared down at her hands. She hadn't even graduated high school, but she had taken on one of the biggest legal frauds in the state, and won. Can I still help people? She asked. Only more now, Collins said. Then I'm in. Collins smiled. Good. Because something tells me this isn't the last time you'll be facing someone like Sloane. Madison nodded. Next time, I'll be licensed. And just as she said it, her phone buzzed again. This time, not a threat. A message from Judge Harwood. Heard you cracked the case. Proud doesn't even begin to cover it. Madison smiled, then turned to the binders again. She wasn't just the girl in the hoodie anymore. She was something else now. A future nobody saw coming. And as the sun rose over the city, for the first time in a long time, she felt unstoppable. The courtroom was packed. Reporters filled the back row, their cameras silent but ready. Law students lined the benches, whispering and pointing toward the front. Every seat was taken. Every eye focused on the young woman standing confidently at the defense table. She wore a simple black suit, nothing flashy. Her hair was neatly tied back, and her hands were clasped in front of her. No hoodie, no backpack, just posture, poise, and presence. Madison Reed had returned to where it all began, this time as a real attorney. Your Honor, she said clearly, we're prepared to present opening statements. Judge Harwood, now seated at the bench for the first time in nearly a year since his assault, nodded once. A small smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. Proceed, counselor. The title still hit her like lightning. Counselor, not little girl. Not teen troublemaker. Not that kid who talks like a lawyer. She had earned every syllable of it. 1 year earlier, after Sloane's arrest, the entire operation crumbled. The zip disk had contained a decade of falsified trial data, insurance scams, and financial records linking multiple executives to hush money payments and illegal human trials overseas. Robin Ziegler was publicly honored posthumously. Mr. Dalton's record was wiped clean. And Madison? She was accepted to Yale Law School through a special accelerated program, the first ever minor to be admitted under a federal legal initiative. Headlines read, Teen who took down corporate giants begins law school at 17. The girl in the hoodie becomes a legal icon. From threats to triumph, Madison Reed's unbelievable rise. She turned down TV interviews, movie deals, book offers, not because she wasn't interested, but because she was too busy building something else, something that mattered. She founded a nonprofit, Clearline, a youth-led legal advocacy network that offered resources to families and students who couldn't afford legal help. Volunteers, hotlines, free seminars, even AI-powered tools to help people understand their rights. All from a laptop in a quiet corner of her new dorm. She still missed her old life. Her bookstore, the dusty shelves, her uncle's dry jokes and peanut butter sandwiches. But now, she called him every week. And whenever she won a case, even a small one, he'd say the same thing. Your parents would be doing cartwheels right now. She'd smile and keep going. Back in the courtroom, the trial rolled forward. This case wasn't about conspiracy or murder. It was about a teacher who'd been falsely accused of misconduct by a student's powerful father, a man with political ambitions who tried to silence complaints by shifting blame. No one else would take the case. Madison did, because she remembered what it felt like to be dismissed. The trial lasted 5 days. On the 6th, the jury returned a verdict. Not guilty. Madison didn't cheer. She didn't pump her fist. She just turned to her client, a tired, graying man who'd spent a year terrified of losing everything, and smiled. You're going home, she whispered. The man broke down in tears. The courtroom erupted in quiet gasps and murmurs. And Judge Harwood stood up, looking down at the girl he once mocked. Only now, she wasn't a girl. She was the kind of attorney every courtroom wished for. Miss Reed, he said, this court thanks you. She nodded. I'm just getting started. That night, Madison stood alone outside the courthouse. The city buzzed around her. Cars, lights, people moving fast. She breathed it all in. The noise, the motion, the energy of justice alive and moving. Her phone buzzed again. A text. From Agent Collins. Proud of you. Call me when you're ready to take on your next monster. Madison smiled. She had faced threats. Corruption. Loss. She had watched a friend die. Watched a mentor bleed. She had stared down fear and walked straight into danger. Not because she wanted glory, but because someone had to. And if there was one thing the world had taught her, it was that the law wasn't just made of rules and codes. It was made of people. People who needed someone brave enough to speak when others stayed silent. She turned to the street. The night was wide open. And somewhere out there, someone else needed help. Madison Reed would be ready. No hoodie this time. Just a sharp mind. A fierce heart. And a black card in her wallet that read, Attorney at Law.